Hi there. Okay, so this is a second video. In my last video, I had a little look at spiritual readers, tarot readers and such. And so this is a second video then looking at spiritual healing. So it's looking at alternative health and alternative healings and complementary medicine, I guess. So if that's your thing, great. Pull up a chair and I'll get into it. So basically, I'll start with a disclaimer. Because I'm going to be talking about spiritual healings and alternative medicine and things like this, this is the Wild West. Okay, this is the unregulated Wild West that most doctors absolutely probably hate and would warn you off. Okay, so just bear in mind, massive disclaimer here, I'm not a medical person. I can't possibly prescribe anything. If you've got any queries or concerns, talk to your doctor, talk to a medical person. All I want to do here is outline a few modalities and talk about what's helped me over the years. Now, I believe I've been helped a great deal by alternative medicine. I appreciate that a lot of doctors would just be very annoyed indeed by this idea, potentially. So as I say, you've got to just be careful. Bear in mind it is unregulated. Do your due diligence, do your research, go by, check and see what sort of feedback they've got, what people are saying about them. Make sure you're getting a good, solid practitioner with a good lot of experience behind them. Bear in mind, no one can offer you a miracle cure. Bear in mind, some people might try and upsell other products. Bear in mind, you might get told information from spirit that could lead you quite a merry dance, that could lead you to part with a lot of money. Keep your feet on the ground. Try not to get too excited. Try to be practical where possible. So if you are dealing with a difficult health condition and you're desperate for answers, that also makes you very vulnerable indeed to potential charlatans. Be careful. Do your research like crazy. Talk to your friends, talk to a doctor, talk to anyone first. Keep your feet on the ground, okay? So that is my disclaimer. So bear in mind, as I say, there's all sorts of people out there, but I believe there's all sorts of good people out there and all sorts of good healings. And it's something you don't hear a lot about in the medical world. Now, it's starting to gain a bit of recognition, isn't it, with things like Reiki. Reiki is now offered, I believe, in some hospitals. And I think there's some scientific evidence to actually say it can be of benefit. Even if the benefit is only psychological or emotional, well, that's something. But I believe that some of these spiritual modalities, these healing modalities, can be a bit more powerful than you would find out about from the mainstream. The mainstream wants to herd you down the one road. And it's the road to a mainstream doctor and a mainstream hospital and all of this. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But in some instances, they don't have all the answers. And sometimes that can lead to other modes of inquiry and other, alternative practitioners can be looked into. Now, for me, my journey into alternative health began many years ago when I suffered an overactive thyroid. Now, it came back twice, and it came back very aggressively the second time. And as anyone with an overactive thyroid knows, for starters, it knocks you for six. It really can. And if it comes back a second time, the medical establishment don't really know what to do other than make it go underactive. So in other words, they can't cure you, but they can treat you. They can put you in a place where they can treat you more easily. Because if it's overactive, it can be a bit dangerous. It's not very good for you at all. But if they make it go underactive, you can be on medication for the rest of your life and it can be treatable. So they either want to give you radioactive iodine or they want to operate. And what they'll do is they'll remove most of your thyroid, and so it will go overactive, basically. So that's the idea. Now, when I was told this, I didn't really fancy it, but also I was going to see a couple of psychic sort of bods and, you know, people like this. And I was told that it could heal. It could be healed with these other healing modalities. And I had no idea what to expect, really. Now, I think it might have been healed the first time due to one of these healing bods, a bit of Reiki, shamanic healing, things like this. And when it came back again, this time I went off and I drank some strange plant medicine. And I also undertook key energy healing and I believe shamanic healing as well. Probably a bit of Reiki on top. And that time it did go. And I guess you'd say it's in remission. That was back in 2012. After that, I had a blood test every sort of 6 months or so just to make sure it wasn't going out of whack again. And so far, touch wood, just going to touch wood, it's been okay. So I believe that the healing modalities I had actually helped my thyroid. Now, a doctor would probably just say it's psychosomatic. You know, I've got no proof of that. Of course I don't. But to me, that's what did it. And I've since used all sorts of alternative healing for various other things as well, and other ailments too. More recently, I've suffered badly with GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disorder. And as anybody with GERD knows, it's a real pain, such a pain. And you end up taking omeprazole or other such, you know, drugs which reduce your stomach acid. Well, if you watch any videos about how to heal GERD, there's a guy who I watch, I can't remember his name now, who's very, very good on YouTube, and his name escapes me. But his view is, he says, look, you shouldn't be reducing your stomach acid, you know, that isn't actually going to help you, because the problem is not to do with too much stomach acid. It's other problems. It's either your lower esophageal thingy-bob, sphincter, the thingy-bob, you know, not closing properly. Or there's other issues, I believe, as well. But, you know, in his eyes, it isn't to do with too little stomach acid or too much stomach acid. So anyway, I wasn't able to come off the medication for that. And the idea is if you take omeprazole, etc., you're only supposed to take it for a couple of weeks or something. Maybe, I don't know, I can't remember how long. Maybe a bit longer, maybe a month or two, tops. And then you're supposed to have a break, I believe. You're supposed to be able to come off it, you know. But there are people who've been on it for years and years and years. And I was on it probably for at least a year without even considering. If I took a day off, I knew it, you know. So thanks to these healing modalities, again, I say thanks to those. Again, a doctor might say it's psychosomatic or something else. And again, I couldn't argue with that. But I believe that the healing modalities I've had have helped me. And this time I've had Reiki, I had a shamanic healing a few years ago, and I've had light language healing as well. And I still get light language healing. I usually get topped up at the moment about once a month, but I will be looking, probably next month, I'll be looking instead to consult a health bod, you know, health foods and things like this, to look at how else I can support what I'm doing, because I've also had to change my diet radically. But as I say, at the moment I've been able to come off the medication and I'm able to have more breaks on it. Occasionally I'll go back on it if I think, oh yeah, still not completely, you know, still having the odd problems. But in the main, if I follow a very sensible diet, and it's a very strict diet, I only drink water at the moment and the odd green tea. And I've cut out various things out of my diet, and I have steamed veg. So I'm trying to do, you know, as many healthy sort of things as I can. I'm also losing weight as well, which is good. So, yeah, So I think there are various steps that we can all take, that we know we can all take, such as diet related and things like this. But when it comes to these healing modalities, what sort of things can you find out there? So you've got Reiki. And Reiki is the one that, as I say, now might be being incorporated into hospitals. I think I said that at the beginning of this video. I can't remember. So Reiki is the sort of, I've remade it once, basically, which is why, so I get confused over what I've actually said in this video and what I've just said in the last video. So basically, Reiki is, yeah, they have Reiki in hospitals. They understand that it can support other modes, you know, your traditional modes of healing and all the rest of it. But again, I think there's a bit more power to Reiki than you could necessarily know. It's a very nice modality. And it's basically, you go along, if you're going to get Reiki, it's a hands-off modality. People can lay their hands on you sometimes, but usually the practice is just a couple of inches above your body, over your chakras. And so it can last 30 minutes to an hour. And it's just a nice, pleasant modality. But you can heal all sorts of things. You can all start the ball rolling, you know, from emotional and psychological to physical symptoms. It can really help. I went along to a Reiki session many years ago. And at the time I was getting over a breakup or something. So I had a little bit of grief, I think, in my lungs area. And I felt that actually sort of lift. And when I feel a healing actually happen to my body, I tend to think of it in terms of like household objects. It's just the image that I get in my head. So it almost felt like a radiator unblocking. That's what sort of came to me, because I could really feel something being lifted. And sure enough, I came away feeling a lot lighter. So if you're suffering from grief or anything like that, it can be helpful. As a complementary, it's not going to necessarily lift your symptoms completely. Of course it isn't. But, you know, it can certainly help in some cases. And then I've had shamanic healings as well. And shamanic healings, I would say, are probably more powerful again. And that's a more active healing. So you get a bit more involved. So, for instance, with one shamanic healing, I'd fallen out with someone and it had been very hurtful. And so she said she could sort of visualise, it was almost like black tar over my stomach area. So I was doing this sort of motion to get rid of the black tar. You know, they direct you what you need to do. But she said, oh yes, I can see it being lifted up now. And so it's going to sound a bit bonkers, some of this, I appreciate that. But sure enough, and at the time I was suffering from pretty rotten gastro issues that just seemed, you know, ongoing. And coming away from that session, again, they cleared up a great deal. So again, there's a lot of power in these sessions. If you're suffering from problems, emotional problems and stuff like that, psychological, and when I say psychological, by the way, I'm not talking about anything. If you've got a serious condition that's required you to see a psychiatrist, or if you're medically depressed, or if you've got, anything, you know, that's quite serious, obviously, I would say in the first instance, doctor, go and see your medical bods. Absolutely. You know, and you can talk to an alternative practitioner as well, but there's no way I could give you any guarantees as to whether you should even see one. Because as well, if you go to see these guys, because they're psychic a little bit, or they're working with spirit, it's a spiritual based healing. So you might get side effects that are spiritual in nature. Okay, so if you're suffering from serious psychological issues, but you start having a spiritual awakening and you start seeing flashes of spirit, it could be a bit much for your psyche. So bear that in mind as well. I'll just add that in, because after I had my Reiki sessions, I also got attuned to Reiki 1 and Reiki 2, and remotely attuned to the master level as well, which I've never used. But at the time, it did mean I was seeing flashes of spirit all over the place. I was just seeing these purple flashes and various things. And because you're opening up a channel, you become more sensitive. You just become more aware of spirit, you know, than you otherwise would be. So again, it's a side effect, and just bear that in mind. So when it comes to shamanic healing, I would definitely recommend that as well. And again, it's quite an empowering healing, because you're helping to do it. You're taking part. You're participating. But it is about empowering you. Shamanic healings and shamanic wisdom, it's about a sort of holistic thing. It looks at you and it looks at the cause. So you could go along with a symptom, like I went along with gastro issues. This is only a few years ago now, just before COVID started. And you can talk about, you know, you're encouraged to talk about what could be a problem in terms of emotional issues, say. And bringing that up, and then say, okay, so here's a physical symptom, here's some emotional stuff I'm going through. There could well be a link. Everything that happens to you emotionally, I think it gets stored in your body in some instances. And I remember years ago, I used to live with a guy who was a massage therapist. And he would say sometimes, he'd give women massages, and he would say that sometimes if he was massaging particular areas of the body, they might just start crying because it's a release. Just releasing that energy that's been stored in your body. So if you store up a lot of negativity and you're quite an angry, negative person, just be aware. Just be aware. Don't be frightened, but just be aware that all of that emotion, you're ingesting it. You know, you're ingesting it. The idea is really to try to work through negative emotions. We all suffer negative emotions, but the idea is you try to work through them and transmute that energy into something else. You don't repress it, because if you repress it, you're stuffing it down. You're literally stuffing it down into your body, as far as I can work out. And if you just allow it or encourage it and feed it, again, you're allowing all that energy to just circulate and, you know, in your own body and your own spirit. And that's not great either. It's not particularly healthy. So shamanic healing is really empowering. It seeks to look at a cause of an issue and seeks to help you with that. And it can be a very powerful thing and really return you to a feeling of your own old self, as well as sometimes actually giving you healing for a physical symptom too, that maybe, as I say, for me and the thyroid stuff, getting that healed or going into remission or whatever was absolutely brilliant. And I believe it was the healings that I undertook that did it. So I would say, again, look up your shamanic healers and go along and have a chat with them and see where you're drawn as well. Because again, this is all to do with spirituality. So see what resonates with you. See what your intuition is trying to point you towards. See what draws you in and who you're naturally drawn to. Because there's a chance that you're naturally drawn to that healer for a reason. On a spiritual level, that they have got the healing that you're going to need, in other words. So that's shamanic healing. At the moment, I get a lot of light language healing. Now, light language healing looks bonkers, okay? It really looks bonkers. So if you've ever been to, like, because I go occasionally to mind, body, spirit fairs, and they're brilliant. And if you go along and you see someone there having light language healing, you're going to go, oh, that looks weird. Because literally they channel spirit directly, or they're channeling other beings directly, alien beings, all sorts of things. And they'll start speaking in what they call light language, which will be the language of these particular beings. So they'll be speaking very rapidly in complete gobbledygook that you won't be able to understand, waving their hands around, making all these symbols as well. Now, it looks batshit, it looks completely bonkers, but I found it to be very, very powerful indeed. Literally, if I have a light language healing, it will knock me out. Sometimes knock me out for a couple of hours, just, yeah, and maybe the next day afterwards. The last one I had, I asked her to help my shoulders because I get osteoarthritis in my shoulders. And the next day, my arms were so painful, I couldn't even drive. Well, I could drive, but only just. So I didn't really go anywhere. The next day, just took it a bit easy. But the day after that, you know, a couple of days later, I was okay again. But just be aware if you have any healings as well, they can knock you out in ways you don't always expect. Now, as I say, it looks bonkers. It can wipe you out a little bit. It can make you very emotional as well. I was really emotional as well for a day or two afterwards. I was like, wow, it can make you feel very vulnerable. They have what they call, what do you call it? I think it's like a healing crisis. So you'll get this, even if you have Reiki, they'll say drink lots of water because you've got all this stuff circulating around in your energy field. Drink lots of water to flush toxins through because they've just stirred up an awful lot of stuff. But also be prepared for a healing crisis. So it's 3 days after your healing where you can feel very emotional, very out of sorts, maybe have physical symptoms as well. But it's part of your healing and you will get through that. So just bear that in mind as well. So light language healing then, it's almost like if you've ever heard of remote, oh gosh, I can't remember what it's called now, but sort of like, psychic surgery. If you've ever heard of psychic surgery, it's kind of like that. Very, very powerful stuff. And I think it's just growing in popularity now. So, for instance, there's so many light language videos on YouTube and stuff like that, for instance. So you can check a few out and see if anything resonates with you. And if it does, you can look at a practitioner on YouTube or look at practitioners elsewhere, maybe go and see one physically. Remember as well now with COVID especially, but just generally, so many people can do this remotely. And you might think that feels a bit weird, the idea of a healing remotely, but it jolly well can. The last time when I got a bit wiped out from my light language healing was remote. I've had remote Reiki, and that was quite a powerful Reiki session. The guy who gave me the Reiki remotely, I think he said one of my parents came through. So just be prepared, anything can happen. And very often with a healing as well, what you'll find is Spirit gives you messages. It'll give the practitioner messages. So you might not have asked for anything, but someone might just pop through and give you a bit of advice. And with light language as well, you'll get a lot of advice. So for me, I get a lot of dietary advice. She's telling me what's going on in my body. Because what happens is they talk in this language, you don't know what's going on. But then after that, she'll translate. She'll tell you what the guides are telling her, what she's getting a sense of. And it's quite funny because she was telling me, I say funny, but she was talking about some of the things I eat because I have my naughty little snacks. You know, I'm dieting really well at the moment. I've lost 1/2 stone, but every now and again I was having a 2-finger Kit Kat every day, dark chocolate. I thought 2-finger Kit Kat, that's all right for the diet, still losing weight. And there she was going, she was just like, la, 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 okay, I'm getting this, you shouldn't be eating this, you shouldn't be eating that, da, 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 da. I'm getting the chocolate in a wrapper, my guides are showing me. I'm like, that's my Kit Kats that I've got to ditch those as well. You know, you can't hide anything from Spirit. So, yeah. So just bear in mind that there are all sorts of modalities out there. And what I would say is, if you've got any interest, switch on YouTube, have a little look at light language healing if you're curious. Think about attending a mind, body, spirit fair, because you get taster sessions of all sorts of things. I've had tuning fork sessions as well, because we are not physical beings, although we kind of are, but we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and ultimately all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration, as Bill Hicks used to say. Nothing is really that solid, you know. Life is in part illusion. So when you have tuning fork healing or sound therapy and things like this, again, that can be pretty beneficial. And I did find with the tuning forks that it really lifted me up and made me feel a bit more like my old self. And different healing modalities will focus on different things and help you in different ways. You know, and I'd had all sorts of healings up until that point, but that just made me feel a particular further step forward, you know. There's crystal healings, there's all sorts of things. So there's an awful lot of things out there. Like I say, I would recommend going along to a mind, body, spirit fair and having a chat with people and seeing where you're drawn as well. We're all of us intuitive beings, and we're far more spiritual. Well, we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. The only difference is some people have remembered, and some people have remembered and are really in touch with their guides and are walking a very spiritual path. And they're showing the rest of us the way and helping the rest of us. You know, your gurus, your shamanic teachers, all things like this. They're just the people who have really woken up to what on earth we're doing on this planet. So I would say go along and just see what resonates with you. That's something you'll hear a lot of in spiritual terms. See what resonates. But it's a good thing. It just means what you're drawn to. What you feel like you're drawn to is likely going to be something that can help you. You know, when I last went to a mind, body, spirit fair, or one of the times I went, it was great because I went along, and because I was suffering with GERD symptoms so badly, I saw a note for this lady who was a psychic. She could do the psychic surgery, but I didn't know it was light language. I didn't really know what it entailed. So I walked around about 3 times looking for this person, and I couldn't find her at all. I'd forgotten what the name was or anything like that. I just knew that someone there did psychic surgery and I really wanted some. Anyway, I couldn't find her at all. So I thought, okay, well, hopefully she's here somewhere, but I didn't know. So I thought, well, I'll have a bit of Reiki because I like a bit of Reiki. So I had some Reiki, and I actually had Rahani Reiki, which is really, really beautiful Reiki. And while I was having that, I was having a chat with a lady about my GERD and all the rest of it. And she was like, oh, that is horrible to heal, you know, having a nice chat with her. And she said, you know what? There's a lady opposite whose healing is amazing. She said she does light language healing. I recommend you go along and see her. Now, at the time, I had no clue about light language healing. None at all. So, and I'd forgot to ask her about the psychic surgery or anything like that. So anyway, I went along, and lo and behold, the lady I went to see, the light language lady, was the person who I'd been looking for. But I hadn't clocked the light language bit. I had no idea what that meant. And then I got the healing from her. And then I also had a really nice reading while I was there. And it was really good. But at every step of the way, if there was something I was looking for, there was guidance. You know, I think that's something that's come into play now as well. If you're spiritual at all, or you're into your spirituality, you probably notice people talking a lot about 5D. We're moving into a new time and all of this, and it's almost become a bit of a cliche. But I believe it's true. I believe that from what I've heard, we're evolving, we're spiritually evolving. The earth that we're living on, she's a living body and she's spiritually evolving too. The solar system we're in, the planets and the solar system are also evolving. Everything is levelling up and everything is evolving. And it's like a testable theory, I believe. And to me, we're getting guidance now more than ever before, and it's easier to get guidance, and we get it quicker. And I say this because if I watch spiritual videos now, if I think, oh, I'm quite interested in this subject, a video would just pop up on my feed that would be that particular subject, and you could say, oh, that's algorithms, and it could be. But then I'll watch that video, and then immediately after that, I'll find another video that answers a question that was in the first video, and so on and so forth. So I'm finding that if you switch into that sort of way of thinking, the guidance comes in really quickly. It's a bit like when I went to the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival, and it was like, oh yes, this person can heal you, and so on and so forth. If you start asking the right questions, the universe dives in to help, I believe. If you start on your path spiritually, you're met along the way. And I found that in my life. I found that to be the case. You know, going along, getting the healings that I got with my thyroid all those years ago and being told and guided, yes, you can heal this by spirit. Spirit had no doubt at all. You can definitely get this healed. And sure enough, it did get healed, you know. So I appreciate why doctors would view this with absolute horror. I really do. But there is healing out there that defies the laws of logic, that defies the laws of whatever we're used to in the Western world. You know, we're so used to healing coming from a hospital and a doctor. But bearing in mind, often you go and you present with symptoms. If they give you a pill, etc., it can help, and it really can in some instances. And of course, in some other instances, it might even save your life. So that's why I'm so keen in this video to say consult a doctor, consult a doctor, consult a doctor. But that said, there are some amazing healings that are out there that absolutely defy the laws of logic. And if you try to explain it to anybody, they could easily say, well, that's psychosomatic. That isn't a thing. That can't be real. You know, and I fully understand why people would feel like that. But I would say if you're dealing with anything that you would like different opinions on from spirit, get yourself off to an alternative healing practitioner. And if you're curious, and if you've been given a treatment protocol that isn't necessarily a cure, but is going to make you dependent upon drugs for the rest of your life, and you want a second opinion from spirit, I'd say have a second opinion from spirit. Now, this video is running over longer than I wanted to. I thought, oh, I'll make it a quarter of an hour video, and here we are at half an hour. But what I'll talk about for the next quarter of an hour, I think, is going to be long COVID and how it might be able to help long COVID as well. So if that interests you, please do stick around. So basically, I add this in purely because I think COVID now, and there's many people out there who still don't believe COVID's real. Well, I've had COVID 4 times now, and I can attest that it's very bloody real. It's very bloody real, and it's not going away. Okay, it's not going away. And we all just need to be aware, have that awareness of it, because as time goes on, I think more and more of us will fall to a form of long COVID, potentially. And in some instances, that can be a bit disabling. And I say all this not to fearmonger, but just to have some awareness. You know, I'm masking up now. It's autumn. And I think it's a jolly good idea to mask up. I had it for the 4th time this summer. It was no joke this time around. It hit my lungs harder, which was just horrible. You know, don't recommend it. TripAdvisor for planet Earth at the moment, I think it would get a pretty poor rating, don't you? You know, don't want to come back, quite frankly. So I thought I'd talk a bit about long COVID because it's a problem. A lot of people get it. I get wiped out when I get COVID for at least a month. Now, I personally imagine that the healing modalities I've talked about, them and others, there's all sorts, that they could probably help with long COVID as well. And again, I'm not giving anyone any, you know, any magic wands or anything here. But if you're a sufferer, if you've got problems, if you found it a bit debilitating, I would say go along. I would say absolutely. Or if you're a bit bedbound and you're really struck and you're, you know, really struggling, I would get a remote healing with someone. I would look into it, absolutely look into it. Just Google light language healer near me, or Google shamanic healing. You know, someone who does remote healing. And I would probably look to start with shamanic healing or light language healing. If you just wanted something very gentle, by all means start with Reiki. But certainly bang them into a search engine and see what comes up. Because it can heal all sorts of things and it can help all sorts of things in a lot of ways, you know. And because everything in your body, as far as I can work out, from an alternative health perspective, because as I say, I'm not a medical bod, but from an alternative health perspective, everything is linked. Everything is linked in your body. So if you're having emotional problems, that can get stored in your body. Grief, for instance, often is thought to be stored in your lungs from an alternative health perspective. When I had healing for my stomach issues, had alternative healing for those, that was because I was given, just some horrible information, etc. And that hit me in the stomach area. Different things can hit you in different areas. People with heartbreak sometimes might actually have physical symptoms occasionally in their hearts, and so on and so forth. So an alternative bod will look to root causes of issues as well. And when it comes to long COVID, we know more about this disease now, or certainly there's more evidence emerging. I was reading on X just yesterday, people saying it seems to be a vascular disease now, that is to do with your blood vessels and your blood, rather than necessarily just like a lung issue or whatever, as it was initially thought to be. And obviously it can have consequences all over your body in all sorts of ways. So I genuinely believe that things like COVID, etc., can absolutely be helped in some instances by alternative health practitioners. And as I say, if you've got any doubts at all, definitely talk to your doctor about this. Do some research and Google it, because nowadays, to me, alternative health is as vital and as necessary as our mainstream health. Now, I'll say this in the UK as well, because in the UK, we have had the luxury of the NHS for many years now. And the NHS is obviously our free national health service. We all pay into it in our taxes or what have you. But it's dying, unfortunately. It's in a terrible state. I don't think our present leader can really resurrect it. I don't think he's minded to be honest. I think it will become more and more privatised. That's the path that it's on. I don't think you can pull the plug on that now. And greater privatisation could lead to a sort of Americanised product at the end of the day. And I've been looking at some of the stories that have emerged from America, you know, people having to choose literally between having a house or having life-saving treatment and things like this. And it's not what you want in a health service. I think a health service needs to be as accessible to everyone as possible. That's just my belief. So I think more and more, we're so used to just toddling along to our doctors, toddling along and getting the help we need. But I would say more and more, we're probably finding that that's a struggle at the moment as you wait longer times for appointments. Sometimes you're not even seen by a doctor in some cases now. You know, someone said they waited for a while, at least a month, to get an appointment. They were so pleased they finally got an appointment, and then they went along. And that's probably after about 127 phone calls or hanging on the phone for hours, because you phone up and there's just a queue of people in front of you. And then you go along only to find, he said, that the appointment was actually with a nurse and not with a doctor as they'd hoped. So it's like the triage system is insane now. Pretty soon you're going to get a bloody appointment with a receptionist at this rate. But anyway, that's a by them by. The point is, we've all of us got to try and be a bit more responsible for our health and think about what we can do to help ourselves as much as possible if you can. Not everyone can. You know, but if you're in a position where you can help yourself, if you smoke, stop. If you drink, cut down a heck of a lot if you need to. Obviously, don't take drugs. If you're on a shitty diet and you live on burgers or pies or something like that, obviously you've got to cut that down. And we all know it's terribly boring advice sometimes that all the most fun things taste the best. You know, if we could get that excited over broccoli, it would be amazing. But, you know, very often we don't. But just try to take as much responsibility as you can. But I think also that goes hand in hand with the alternative healing as well. Because as I say, some things have an emotional counterpart. And in some cases, not even in this lifetime. Now, I'm getting into quite wacky territory now. So if this is going to be too much for some of you, I fully understand. But I think I'll just talk a bit about a past life practitioner now as well for another few minutes. And then I'll try and wrap it up. So basically, there's something called, and I believe it's called QHHT healing. And it's something started by a lady called Dolores Claiborne, I want to say, something like that. And I'm hoping I've got her name right and I haven't mixed her up with a Stephen King novel. But anyway, yeah, I have, I think. It's Dolores Cannon. Sorry, Dolores Cannon is the lady I'm thinking of. Claiborne could be a Stephen King novel. Not really sure at this juncture. Anyway, Dolores Cannon was an American lady who was very much a spiritual bod and who had some very interesting experiences and some very interesting advice. And one of her things was hypnotherapy, I believe, and I believe a bit of past life regression. And there's actually a series now, I think it's on Netflix, and it's all about this QHHT past life regression healing. It's very fascinating. It's really, really cool stuff. People go along and they've had issues. Maybe they're just a bit unhappy in their lives and they're not really sure what's going on. And very often they have a meeting with or a healing with a past life and they find it gives them enormous comfort. So if this is something you're interested in, I think if you Google a QHHT practitioner in your area, and there's probably going to be one relatively close by, I should think, and obviously Google the practice, get a bit up to speed, do your due diligence on hypnotherapy and past life regression and things like this, because anything when it comes to hypnosis, you know, there could be a few caveats and a few warnings in place there as well. I've had, what did I have hypnosis for? Years ago, I think I had some for confidence and things like this. I had some hypnosis sessions. Felt very peculiar. For that particular instance, I'm not sure it really did anything at the time. I was a lot younger then. But the QHHT certainly seems to. And the episodes on Netflix are really interesting. I haven't watched the whole series yet. But there's one guy who talks about it on YouTube, I believe. And it really fascinated me because this poor bloke, he'd suffered from migraines all his life. Really horrible, horrible migraines. And I think the doctors had said, right, we've had a look at you. We can't find a cause. You know, it's just something you're going to have to live with. So he went along to one of these QHHT sessions and they took a look at his past lives, and I'm laughing. It's really, really horrible. So I'm not laughing at him. It's just, it's mild hysteria, I think. Basically, they looked at his past life. I mean, they went back a few lives. I think with most people, you just look at one life, maybe a couple of lives. And mostly the stories are quite pleasant. In this poor bugger's case, his story was not very pleasant. He'd had a head injury in one life. I think he might have got beheaded in another life or something like that. Possibly not beheaded. By accident, you know. In another life, he got struck over the head. So I'm not even kidding. There was so much to do with his head in his past lives. It's unreal. He just uncovered 4 or 5 lives. I was thinking, oh my God, what sort of lives has this person had? Because I'm a believer in past lives. One of the theories is that we're living all of our lives simultaneously because time is illusion. So, you know, there's that. Anyway, this guy, poor bloke, but because he was able to go and revisit these lives and talk to an old version of him and get healing and help regarding all of these lives in these sessions, I don't know how many sessions he had, completely cured his migraines, really bad migraines. Now, if I could remember his name, it would make it a better story, because then you could go and Google it. But unfortunately, I can't. So when I finish this video, when I put it up, I will have a look. I'll have a little look on YouTube and see if I can find him. Because, yeah, I found that fascinating. Hopefully he wasn't beheaded. I might have just made that up. Really horrific. I'm really sorry about that. I have no idea if he actually was or not. But he did suffer some pretty bloody awful head injuries and things like this. But yeah, as I say, completely able to cure the migraines. And for the skeptics, again, you can't prove any of this. Though they could easily say, well, it's clearly wish fulfillment. It's clearly psychosomatic. And I couldn't prove otherwise, nor am I trying to prove anything in this video. I'm just saying that there's an awful lot more out there. And psychosomatic or not, it damn well worked for this guy. He's like, don't have any migraines now. Brilliant. So that's another thing to consider. So many different modalities out there. As I say, if you're a bit weirded out by light language and you just want to go with tuning forks, for instance, that can do an awful lot. That can really help. You know, I've found that if you want to have crystal healing, for instance, that can do a lot. And look, lest you think that these are just some random people that just hold these mystical, magical powers, I just want to impress as well that you're spiritual too. The only difference between them and you is, as I say, they've remembered it, or they're being awakened to it. They're being awakened to the fact that we're literally all one consciousness. We're funneled into these bodies and we feel quite alone in these bodies, and we feel like what is out there. And if you don't know, if you've got no clue, then life can feel very frightening. It can feel very isolating. But if you start waking up and you start having flashes of memory, or you start having spiritual experiences, you suddenly get the idea that you're not alone. You've never been alone, and you're really loved, you know, and that's a fact. These are facts. You are absolutely treasured by the divine, by God. You're not alone, you know. And I'm just reminded of this too, that we've all got gifts and we've all got this ability to see into spirit. We've all got latent gifts, or we're all just a bit rusty because we haven't, you know, awakened that side of us. So things that can wake you up, things that can attune you to the spiritual, are things like meditation. If you meditate, a side effect of meditation is starting to discover your spiritual nature. And it might not happen for ages. It might happen very quickly. It might happen very strongly, or it might just happen in a mild way, depending on how much you meditate. You know, I used to meditate regularly. I've not been able to meditate successfully for some time now, because I end up getting too distracted. It's very difficult sometimes to get into meditation. And yet when you fall into meditation, it's the easiest thing in the world. So your initial struggle just looks ridiculous, but there it is. So I used to meditate for a 20-minute session in my local Buddhist centre once a week. And I found that it was just enough for me to set me up for the week, you know, just to come back to myself, to become grounded, centred, a bit calmer, a bit more aware of spirit, and a bit more happy to just go about my daily life. I just found that, oh yeah, this is what I needed. So I think just do what works for you. You know, some people swear by an hour a day and things like this. And I think, who's got an hour a day to meditate? Truly, that 20 minutes a week, you know, that felt like a bit of a luxury. That's a reasonable time, I think, to ask most people to set aside. And I think if you're looking to do it, I think starting with a local Buddhist centre is a really nice thing to do. It's a really nice introduction. I think if you're looking to meditate and you're looking to fork out hundreds of pounds, just be a bit wary of that, because you don't need to. There's free meditations on YouTube. There's all sorts of ways to meditate. I think meditating with other people can help, because I personally think the group energy can help lift you up. But that's just my own personal thoughts. So there's that. And if you have any spiritual healings as well, so your Reiki, shamanic healing, etc., that's another way you're going to find a side effect, is getting more spiritual. And I remember years ago, on one of the little courses that I went on, we were using crystals on each other. So we all just paired up in a group exercise. And what you had to do was just imagine that the person you were doing your crystal healing on, that they had, just imagine sort of black smoke coming up through their body. So I imagined it coming up through this lady's legs, through her torso, up through her head, and then out the top of her head. And you just imagine that anything negative in her body is this black smoke. So that's what it is. It's not just random black smoke. You're just picturing anything that's dark in her body coming up through the body. And then when it came up the top of the head, you just use your crystal and just flick it off, sort of thing, and transmute the energy. Ask the universe to transmute any negative energy. So that was one of the exercises we did. And after you've done your exercise, you sit around and you tell each other what you found and what you discovered. And I said to her, I really struggled in your stomach. I said, I really struggled to visualise the smoke coming up through your stomach. I really struggled. And she said, oh, yes, she said, I've had a number of stomach operations. Now, I couldn't have known that. She hadn't told me that before. But I think that we really can connect with each other's energy in that way. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be some big, amazing thing. We think of it as this weird esoteric thing, or this absolute fantastical thing, or this, you know, hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo, etc. Because we're trained and we're brought up with Western scientific values as being the predominant thing. And so many people find it very, very difficult to imagine that there's anything else, let alone that healings could be this spiritual thing. They're at a loss. They think it's absolute mumbo jumbo. But that's how easy it is. That's how easy it is to tune into another person's energy. And I didn't know what I was seeing. Some people were getting some quite, you know, interesting visions about other people, or interesting insights. That was just a sense of a struggle. I was just like, why is it such a struggle? And I thought it was a me problem. I thought, oh God, I'm normally quite good at visualization, but I'm really struggling here, you know. So I thought it was me. And when I relayed the information, she said, no, I've had all these stomach operations. So I think we can sense spirit very easily. Another way, of course, that you can just sense your own energy is get your hands, clap them together, rub them really vigorously. And then as you part your hands and you bring them together very softly, I can feel the energy in my palm now. I can feel, you just feel this tingling sensation in your palms. And you can just feel almost like this cushion of energy that you're sort of bouncing off as your palms go further together, and then as they ebb away from each other. You can just feel your energy counterpart. So there's all sorts of exercises you can do. There's all sorts of healing modalities out there. There's not necessarily any guarantees. So I'm not trying to blow smoke up anyone's bum. And I'm not trying to sell a product, because although I have been trained in Reiki, that was some time ago. I'm actually reteaching myself via a course online at the moment, because I haven't done it for a little while. But it's very easy. Anyone can learn Reiki, and anyone can become attuned to Reiki. As I say, none of this makes anybody better than anyone else. I've rattled on for 53 minutes now, so I want to just do something about the new age and people who get ideas of superiority as well. And then I think I'll probably close with that. So I say this because some people in the new age has exploded over the last 30 or 40 years. My God, has it exploded, which is really good on the one hand, because it means spiritual ideas are out there, they're accessible. We're all waking up. We're all waking up to the idea that there is something more out there, that we are not alone, that we are spirit, that's something going on. You know, even if you're just starting to wake up a bit and just get a sense that there's more to life, then that's a good start. And the New Age is one way of doing this, I guess. So many people coming forward now going, oh yes, I'm in my human body now, but I was a Pleiadian in a former life. And before that, I was a lion in a jungle on planet Mars or something. I don't know. There's an awful lot of people now laying the most, coming up with the most crazy sounding claims. I happen to believe that some of them could be real, absolutely. Why not? I don't think we're alone in this universe. And I think many of our past lives may have been on other planets for some people, in other universes, maybe in other dimensions. Who knows? The universe is weird. It's really weird. But there are some practitioners out there and some gurus and things like this who can seem to be a bit superior to other people. And so I just caution against that as well. If you're going out there and you're a fledgling spiritual bod and you're looking for a bit of guidance and a bit of advice, I would say start with people who seem the most grounded. So find people who aren't afraid to laugh at themselves, who are a little bit humble or a lot humble, who are aware of their own aching fallibilities as a human, because we're all of us fallible. It doesn't matter how much of a guru you are. Some people like to start to believe their own hype. And some very spiritual people, some very beautiful sounding gurus or whatever, can also be a bit haughty, a bit superior at times. And I just caution against following those sort of people to start with. I would look for the most humble people, for people who are kind, who are caring, who are humble and grounded to start with. Because no matter how grand somebody is or how grand the claims of someone is, they're still human. We're all of us human. We're all of us fallible. All of us are flawed. It's just to what degree, quite frankly. None of us can lay claim to being better than anyone else. We're all on this earth, having been here many lifetimes, going round the same dance, and we'll pass and go on to spirit and come back and get recycled who knows how many times. Some people say this is our last incarnation now where we have to do this, and after this we get to hop off to other planets if we want. Well, who knows if that's true? It's a nice thought, but who knows if it's true? So just bear that in mind, because very often what I said, this links into what I said in my last video actually. In my last video, I talked about giving away agency. So giving away your personal agency. If you're going to see a psychic medium a lot, you're going to see a tarot reader a lot, and they're telling you messages from spirit, they're telling you about your life, it can be easy to get a bit mesmerised and to give them a bit of power over you. That is to say, believe absolutely what they say, and to start going back for more and wanting a bit more advice or a bit more help or whatever, and forgetting that you are actually in charge of your own life. And exactly the same thing applies to a guru. Exactly the same thing applies to a guru. No matter how good they think they are, no matter the level that they've achieved in this life, you are still master of your own world. You are still in control. And you know you best. You know you better than anyone else. So don't let anyone make you feel small. Don't let anyone make you feel less than capable or less good than you are. And always remember that. Always remember, you are a magnificent being in your own right. You bloody well are. You've made it this far in your life. However old you are, whatever you're doing, you've been through something. We've all been through something now, especially with COVID. You know, the older you get, the more things you've been through. That's the only difference between me and a younger person. Just been through more things, that's all. We've all been through something. And we've all done things we wish we hadn't have done. We're none of us perfect. We've all said things we thought, oh God, why did I say that? We are not perfect beings, and we're not meant to be perfect beings. All we are meant to do, I believe, is live our lives with as much integrity and heart-centeredness as we possibly can. So get out of your head into your heart. You know, you've got brain cells in your heart, I believe, and also in your gut. And people talk about gut feelings. And, you know, you've got that emotional intelligence as well. So it doesn't mean lose your mind completely. But I would say our society has had so much primacy on the intellect over heart-centered stuff, which is why some horrible things happen on this planet sometimes in the name of science. And you think, oh God, that's bloody awful. Makes you feel a bit sick, or it makes you feel a bit ill, or you're just heartbroken over it, because they have just rationalised it in their heads to the point they've cut their own, you know, feelings off. Well, that isn't progress to me. That's the antithesis of progress to me. You know, we've got in this mess that we're in as a species precisely because we have leaned too heavily on intellectual pursuits. We've cut ourselves off from spirit. We've cut ourselves off from our own hearts in some instances. And I say we, I mean the powers that be. You know, very often you see people who are at the helm who are absolute psychopaths in companies as well. You know, we know that psychopaths are drawn to positions of power, and dark personality types generally, sociopaths, psychopaths and narcissists are drawn to positions of power. We know this, you know, and they are the people who have the least amount of empathy possible. Some of them have none. I think your psychopaths have absolutely zero emotional empathy, but they have cognitive empathy, so they can mimic it. So they're out there. There's a lot of them about, and a lot of them are drawn to positions of power. So we've got society all wrong. The people who should be in charge are the ones at the bottom of the rungs, you know, and the people who are in charge are the people who don't actually care. So it's not great at the moment. And I think there's going to be more societal upheaval, personally, from what I've heard, spiritually, whether or not that comes true or not. That leads me to something I should have said in my last reading as well, actually, which I didn't say, which is, oh no, I think I did. I touched upon the idea that people, even powerful card readers, powerful gurus, what have you, they don't always get it right, you know, not least it's very hard to predict the future. But even if you go for a card reading and they look into your future and things like this, very often you'll get advice which just doesn't come true at all. That can happen. They can tell you about yourself as you are now in some instances, but not necessarily what's going to come to pass. So bear that in mind as well. But I think the power of intention is very, very powerful. So your intention is powerful. So if you go out into the world with a heart full of love and a desire to make positive change, you could absolutely set the world alight with those intentions in the best possible way. You know, if you just can hold love and compassion, they are key. They are absolutely key. Love and compassion, you know. Jesus said, love your enemy. And he wasn't messing about. It wasn't a joke. You know, it's the most difficult thing in the world. But he didn't just say it for fluff. He didn't say it for no reason. He said it because the most powerful, transformative emotion in the world is love. And if you can hold love in your heart for people, even people who've wronged you, and that doesn't mean becoming a walkover, by the way. You can put up boundaries, absolutely. If anyone's mistreated you, etc., you know, and you need to get the hell away to protect yourself, you do what you need to do. And you have to heal, and you have to take on difficult emotions in order to heal. And that can take a long time. That can be a very fragile process. There might be instances where you say, no, I cannot love this person. You have to take things at your own pace and don't let anyone gaslight you. So don't, you know, your feelings are valid. In other words, your feelings are valid. So I'm getting low battery. I'll probably wrap it up at this point. But suffice to say, there are a lot of healing modalities out there. We are not powerless. You know, if our NHS fails in this country, we are not powerless. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean there can be no healings for us. There are other things we can do, and food as medicine as well. We tend to see food as recreational nowadays, but it's fuel for the body, and it can also be medicinal in some instances too. You know, and that leads me on to herbs and things like that as well. And you can look into whatever foods, you know, nutritionists and things like this who could advise you, various alternative healing buds who can advise you what to eat from medicinal reasons and things like this as well. So I would recommend anybody struggling to look into this, and especially if you're struggling because you've been told by medical bods they don't know what to do with you, there is no cure, or, you know, you've just got a long-term thing, like fibromyalgia as well is another one, isn't it? But they don't really know how it's caused or what's going on with it as well. So I would say with anything like that, just start to research and try different modalities. And if one doesn't work, try another. You know, you're on a healing journey. And it's very often the people who heal who end up becoming practitioners, actually. Shamans are usually chosen, having undergone very difficult life circumstances. If you get a true shaman as well, very often they're dealing with something very dark in their own life, or they were before they became a healer. And it was their healing journey that got them to be a powerful teacher. Yeah, so there's that. You know, your healing can become, you know, in some cases, it can become something you go on to teach other people about as well. And obviously, if you find anything good, let other people know as well, and just look into it a heck of a lot, because I think it needs a lot more consideration now because our own NHS is failing. But I think it should have had that consideration anyway. We've neglected a part of ourselves for too long. We've neglected the spiritual part of ourselves for too long. And now I think is a great time to change that. Not everyone who undertakes spiritual healings is going to become a healer. And not everyone who goes on a bit of a path of discovery is going to take it all the way. Not everyone is meant to in this lifetime. You know, everyone's got a different journey and a different role to bring. But I believe having that greater knowledge of spirituality is an empowering thing, because it brings that agency back into our own lives to be able to make better choices with greater love for ourselves as well as for others. You cannot underestimate that alone. So there we are. So I've rattled on for nearly 1 hour, 10 minutes. I hope this video finds you well. I hope you found something in it of interest. Sorry it's such a long video. Leave your thoughts below. Let me know what you think. If you've had any healings and you want to share that with anyone else, please leave your thoughts below on that too. You know, it's exciting to me what's out there, and I hope that we get to continue to explore it, you know, because I believe giant pharmaceutical companies will see it as a threat and will probably try to suppress information because it might interfere with their profits in some cases. Now that, of course, is speculation on my part, but I'm not sure it's unduly warranted. And I say this, and I'll close with this, I guess. I'll say this because today I was reading a bit about Ozempic, you know. They're pushing that in the UK now a bit to say, hey, we get everyone who's overweight in the UK, who's obese, we'll jab them. We'll jab them with Ozempic and other such products, and it'll be great. And we'll get them all back to work. Yeah, it'd be fantastic. What could possibly go wrong with that? Well, for starters, it wasn't really designed as a weight loss drug. And I think there's some side effects. Well, there are some side effects in some cases. And it's probably not the most desirable solution. The best solution is people find ways to healthily lose weight themselves. But anyway, that's a by the by. My point is that in the US, these companies, there's been some kickbacks. Apparently, there's an article in Reuters I read today. Is it Reuters? Yeah. Reuters. And let me know in the comments if I've mispronounced that. But in that article, it just says, I think there's been, a lot of money given to doctors to promote this product, potentially, allegedly. I have to check the article, but it seems to suggest. Now, if money changes hands, and if a lot of money changes hands, and it becomes a bit about dazzling profit, does healthcare fall by the wayside a bit? Is it a conflict of interest? I would say it's a huge conflict of interest potentially there, whereas alternative health does just focus on your healing path. Actual mainstream medicine might focus on profit to some degree. Yeah, could be a bit of a conflict of interest in some cases. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, I will leave it there. As I say, I hope this video has been helpful to someone. I can really rattle on, so apologies for that. And yeah, let me know what you think. And if you are thinking of trying an alternative health treatment, as I say, I would recommend getting yourself along to a mind, body, spirit fair in the first instance, if you can, because there's so many different modalities there. If you go along to a big one, there's a plethora of modalities there. You're going to have your Reiki, shamanic healing, tuning forks, sound energy healing. You're going to have all sorts of things, and then just go and see what resonates, what draws you to it. What do you come away, feeling? How are you doing with it? Let us all know if you do go for it. And if it helps you, let other people know as well. Because as I say, I think unfortunately with COVID, I think we're all going to start seeing possibly more problems emerging as a result of it, either directly or indirectly. So it might be secondary illnesses that spring up possibly as a result of, and things like this. So I think it would just make sense for all of us to explore these healing modalities which are out there, which are some of them very, very good indeed. And it would be great to hear about more doctors and actual medical bods trying out these things for themselves and finding they work too, so they can actually discuss them with their patients and have some idea as to what they're talking about. Because as I say, we've had this split for so many years. Everything mainstream is seen as good and kosher and science, and we follow the science and as though science is a little Pied Piper leading us merrily to a wondrous utopian destination, and everything else is neglected. Spiritual matters and alternative health is just seen as quackery, but it is not. It is just unfortunate that this has been a myth that has been peddled for too long, potentially to suit the mainstream. So yeah, that's me. We'll leave it there. I hope you're having a great evening, and I'm making this video Tuesday, so if I upload it tonight, don't forget to look out your windows at night time, in a couple of nights time, because we're going to have a supermoon, and it's the third supermoon out of 4 I believe that we're going to have this year. So yeah, it'll be pretty special looking. So if you can get outside with the camera, then do that if it's a nice evening. All right then, take care. God bless. Bye. Okay, a quick addendum, which I'm going to stick on the end of this video. I suddenly remembered there's spiritual healing as well, literally healing from Jesus, and spiritualist churches and things like that too. So because I've had so many different healing modalities back in, a few years ago, I've got osteoarthritis in various joints in my shoulders, but also my knees. So it's my left knee, and it was really playing up at the time. I could barely walk. Driving was in a lot of pain, and I was starting to think I'm going to have to get an automatic car. I can't even drive. I can barely walk. I was in a lot of pain, and just getting in and just wanting to rest my leg because it was so painful at the time. So it was a real problem. And this was during COVID, so there were various spiritual healings. I'd already been baptised And so I basically found a church, and it was one a little way away, but they were doing remote healings with Jesus. And yeah, I got a lovely person remotely, explained the problem. They gave me this, it was really nice. They gave me this information. Basically, I hadn't told them anything about my childhood, but they were telling me what I was like as a child. They were just relaying it back to me through spirit, through Jesus. And they gave me healing for it. And literally within a day or so, it cleared up, and it had been so painful. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in as well, because I spent the entire video talking about various alternative healings, but there's also healings out there from Jesus, and you can also ask Jesus into your life. So obviously, if you want to get closer to spirit, you can meditate, you can do yoga, you can undertake various practices, but you can also ask Jesus into your life. And this is an area where some people find it a bit awkward to talk about, because we've got a bit of a stigma now about religion, I think, in this country. So some people don't really want to hear it, or they tend to think that you're going to then preach on a street corner or something like that if you start talking about Jesus. But basically, I mean, I've been on quite a spiritual journey, I guess, over the years, and I've had a oneness experience some years ago, a sort of wonderful experience that was drinking plant medicine. I've had some lovely experiences meditating where I felt just a sense of something bigger than me, just a sense of that divine presence, a loving divine bliss that you might hear people talking about when they meditate and things like this. But during COVID, I think I got a bit confused on my spiritual journey as well. And I started looking at videos about people who came to Jesus, and they were really compelling. There's a lot of them on YouTube. There's an awful lot of testimony, hundreds, in fact, of people, perfectly normal people, you know, who just going about their lives, atheists, doctors, anybody. And suddenly they either get hit by a realization, they'll have a vision, or they, you know, something happens. Something happens. In some cases, they ask Jesus into their lives and they have a transformative experience. So I thought I'd try it. And it wasn't like an experiment. I genuinely felt like I really wanted to know if Jesus was real. I really wanted to have an experience and to find out for myself. Because it's the one place, it's like the one place we're taught not to look. If you're in the New Age, as one lady says on her channel, Jesus is Truth. She says you're taught to look everywhere else. You look in Buddhism, you're looking in every other religion, you're looking in Eastern philosophy, you're looking all over the place. But you don't look at Jesus. Why on earth not, you know? So I did the same thing. I asked Jesus into my life. And I think, you know, if you do it really sincerely and you ask him into your life, then you might have some form of experience of Jesus. And it is a supernatural experience. You can't explain it. But I did. The next day, I felt peace and joy. And it was a very, very beautiful experience, a very gentle, loving presence. It's different, again, from the sort of spiritual bliss that you'll experience. Just a very gentle, loving presence in my heart. And after that, you know, it faded away. But I had this experience and it felt supernatural because we were smack bang in the middle of COVID, and I certainly wasn't having a party at the time. You know, I was feeling some level of fear and a bit downhearted, as I'm sure many of us felt during COVID, you know, just trying to get through it. And so I had this experience. So I thought, yeah, I'm doing Jesus a disservice if I don't talk a little bit about that as well. And then I got baptised about a year later. So now I sort of oscillate in between both. I tend to talk about oneness, Buddhist oneness, or I'll talk about all, you know, the great divine presence, the source, as some people will call it. as a sort of God essence. But I will also talk about Jesus as well, because I think both are true, both are valid. And I just don't think you can go wrong with Jesus. I really don't. Whereas I think there are many traps in the New Age for the unwary. I think you have to be careful in the New Age. Whereas I think with, if you just come to Jesus with a sincere heart, I think he really will look after you and take care of you. So there's that as well. So I thought I'd just end with that too, to say there's plenty of healing modalities out there. And it doesn't always mean that you'll be healed. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's your path to be healed in every instance. Sometimes it might be that our struggle is part of the path, Otherwise, I guess everyone would just be healed instantly and it would be fine. I think sometimes we learn an awful lot through the struggle as well. However much we don't want to be going through it, do we? We don't want to have a difficult time. Of course we don't. So yeah, I think I'll just end with that point as well. That's something else that you can just do at home. You don't have to travel anywhere. You don't have to do anything. You can just ask him into your heart and mind and just say, please, if you're real, show me. And especially for people, anyone broken, anyone a bit lost, anyone just feeling like the weight of the world is on their shoulders, Jesus is someone else to consider as well. And so is spirit generally. You've got spirit guides with you. We've all got spirit guides with us. I genuinely believe that. We've all got a path that we're walking. We've all got something that we're meant to do that we can bring to the world. And that's just generally what you're good at. What are you good at? That's what you're here to bring to the world, whether it's singing or writing or dancing or playing football. Whatever it is that you're really good at, chances are that is your gift that you're meant to share, other people as well, in whatever way. So yeah, I think I'll end on that note now. So it's an even longer video. I'll either knit them together or I'll pop this on as a separate video. But as I said, I felt like I was doing a disservice to Jesus if I hadn't popped this on here, because he helped me some years ago as well. So yeah, I've been sort of put back together spiritually, really, by various different spiritual beings, but I'm jolly grateful. I'm so grateful, so grateful for these healings, so grateful, because life really is, it's a difficult life. Life on planet Earth is really difficult, but if you take away any sense of who we are spiritually, then you can see why people get so broken, right? If people are atheists and they think there's nothing out there at all, and we're just here on our own, and then we die and go to a whole world of nothing, then yeah, you're going to get a bit down at times. Some people don't. Some people think it's liberating. They go, well, when we die, oblivion, it's great. I'm like, to me, I like the idea that we go somewhere, that it's been for something. That everything we do, that we've learned, everyone that we've loved, all of the good that we've had in our lives, that doesn't go nowhere. It gets carried in our hearts. It gets carried in our spiritual essence. And I think as well, I keep thinking of other things to add on to this video. I think as well, there's a ripple effect that we're not even that aware of. So when you're happy and when you're full of love and when you're in that state, that has a ripple effect beyond what it goes into the spiritual as well. I genuinely believe that. We all help shape this world. We all help shape it. And we know there's so much negativity out there. I'm not saying we need to try and, counteract that necessarily. But I think every time that you pray or you meditate, you do. And I think every time you send love out to someone, you think of someone with loving thoughts, I think that in itself is powerful. So I think anything that you do like that, you pray, meditate, people belittle prayer sometimes and just say, oh, it doesn't do anything, does it? Well, I believe it does. I believe every prayer is heard and every prayer resonates on the spiritual plane and it's heard. Everything done with love is felt somewhere and is heard and has a ripple effect and is an integral part of all of us being here, because we're all fighting the darkness. I think there is a spiritual battle going on at the moment, light versus dark, and holding on to hope and to love, no matter what's going on around you, I think is probably one of the greatest achievements spiritually. I think it's one of the most positive things that any of us can do in this world, because I think that resonates out beyond anything that we can possibly know. So yeah, I'm just going to end on that note now, and I'm not going to think of anything else for now. That'll do. That'll really do. So I hope this is all right. I hope you're not just snoring away gently somewhere. And yeah, hope this video finds you well. Please do leave any thoughts below. As I say, I'd be really interested to hear about other people getting healed as well. And if you found healing works for you, then please, do share that in your own way, whether or not you just tell someone else who's suffering or whether you make a video yourself. I think, as I say, I think part of it is to do with a spiritual battle, and I think also part of it is it's just ignorance. People just don't know, and people don't know out of the most well-meaning not knowing. Your doctors, etc., have to draw the line. They have to bottom line things, and they have to look at things from the most logical, rational perspective. That's what they've been trained to do. So they're not belittling it out of any horrible reason. They're just trying to help people, and they genuinely don't want to see people going towards practitioners who might harm them. But I'd love to see more of them appreciate the good that can come from some of these healing modalities. So yeah, hope this video finds you well. As I say, I will go now. I'm going to go now. Have a great evening, and yeah, take care and leave your thoughts below. All right then, good night. God bless.